when it comes to procedural modeling, one of the key fundamentals is randomization. And one of the most important things to do inside of Houdini is to be able to copy instances of objects to points and randomly have them rotate and scale based on whatever values you set. So we're going to show you how you can do this a couple different ways. Number one, we're going to use the copy stamp node, and then we're also going to use a for each loop. I'll go over how to do it with both of those because this is one of the most important things that you should know how to do, and it can help you astronomically when it comes to doing things like, for example, one of the things I've used it for is creating an asteroid generator, and also I've used it in cliff generators and rock generators in general. So let's go ahead and show you how you can do this. So first off, like always, drop in a geometry node, and then we're going to dive into that. And for now, I'm just going to use a rubber toy test geometry so that you can easily see kind of what's happening. So from here, we're going to need a transform node, and we'll explain why in a bit. I'm just going to wire that up. But we also need to create our point cloud, so I'm going to create a box. There's multiple ways to create point clouds. This is just a super quick and easy way to do it. So use a box or whatever geometry you want, and then you can use a points from volume. Wire that up. I'm going to just scale this up nice and big. Let's make it something like 20. And then we're going to go ahead and view that. See, super dense, which is not what we want right away. So let's just bring down the number of points quite a bit here. And let's add some random jitter to it so our points aren't all in a grid. And then from here, like I said, we're going to use a copy stamp. So just wire this up. And then you can see that it's doing part of what we want already. So this is already got us copying each of the rubber toys to every single point. It is a little off from where the points are just because it's going to paste based on the origin of the object. So to make them have random rotation, we are going to go into the stamp input here of the copy node. We're going to click this stamp inputs, and then we're going to set up each of these variables to do whatever we want. So let's do a rotation for the X. So I'm just going to do route X. I'm going to do route Y, route Z, and then I'm also going to do a scale. And for these values, we're going to do the same thing for all of the rotations, and then the scale we're going to do a little bit differently. So we were going to use a random because we want to create a random number, and then we're going to base this off of the point number so that each individual point gives us a different value. So this is just going to create a different value or a random value for each individual copy, and it's going to be from 0 to 1 because the random operation creates a value from 0 to 1. So we want to change this to fit it from our first point, or our first number, which is, say, 0.5, and then we're going to set it from 0 to 1 because that is our initial range the random operation gives. And then we want to set the minimum value, so we'll do a rotation of 0 and then a rotation of 360 degrees. So one full rotation around whatever axis. So we can just copy and paste this into each one of these, and then I'm going to just copy and paste it into the scale as well, and we're just going to change these last couple of values. So we don't want to do from 0 to 360 because scale of 0 would just basically get rid of our model. So maybe we'll do something like a 0.2 to, let's say, 1.5. And obviously you can set this to whatever you want. If you don't want to have as much rotation with these, you can just set the values to something different. And if you really wanted to, you could control these values by setting up a null, and then you could create an input on this, go to edit parameter interface, and then create a integer, and then just click accept for now. And then you could copy this parameter and then paste relative references in there, and then you could use this null to change the rotation, the max rotation or the max scale of these. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this. You would just put this parameter of your null into whatever you wanted. So if you wanted to change the max value of this rotation, so the rotation of z, actually let's do it for the scale. So let's right click and then paste relative references. Make sure that that's all good. Yep, looks like that will work. So let's just illustrate how we can do that. So to get the rotation going into the transform node, this is why we needed the transform, so we could affect these values. So we're going to do the rotation x first. So let's do stamp because we're stamping the inputs. And then we need to identify the copy node down here. So the way we do that is use a parenthesis and then 2 periods with a slash, and then just start typing your node. And then you're going to do another parenthesis. And then we need to use the variable that we set up. So this will be rotation x, which is what we set, and then whatever value that we want for if it fails. So let's say that it for some reason doesn't generate a value, then we would want to set it to, I'm going to put 0. So we'll just have 0 rotation. So when we hit enter here, you're going to see they all change direction. So we can just copy the values here. I'll paste that in and just change the y. And then I'm going to change the z as well. And actually, before I go about this, this is going to have a default value of 0. So let's go ahead and change that. So we'll go back into this, go into the channels, and let's just say the default value is 1.5 like we set up initially. So we'll click accept. And then we need to do the scale here. So we're going to use this. So we'll do basically the same thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that. And then I'm going to do a stamp, or sorry, not a stamp, a scale, because that is what we set up. And then we want to set this to something different than 0, because obviously if we set it to 0 and it fails, then it's just going to eliminate our object. So let's set it to just 1. So you can see now that that has affected all of our values. Now if we go in and we change this, you can see that we can affect the scale based on this null. So you can basically set this up to be completely customizable with inside of your geometry node if you wanted to do that, and you wanted to have more control over it. You can just keep inputting different integers in here, or you wouldn't even need to use an integer. You could use a float, do a float, and you can create whatever kind of variables and whatever controls of your copy stamp that you want. So super quick and easy to do, but it is something that is extremely useful, and I use it all the time. So it's something that you should definitely know how to do and know how to create. So I'm going to jump into how to do the for each loop next. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. In order to get random rotation and scale with the for each loop, we will need to drop down a for each point in this case, because we're going to use the points. And then let's go ahead and wire up our points from volume. We're also going to need another copy stamp. So we'll just drop that in. We're also going to need another transform node. And we can go ahead and wire that up, and need to wire that up differently. So to get this to work, right away it's not going to do anything, because we need to set up basically the same sort of information. It's just going to work a little bit differently. So first off, we need to create a metadata node. So we're going to click on our for each begin and create meta import. So this is going to allow us to essentially do the same thing as we did here with a copy stamp, just with the for each. There are some benefits of using a for each loop over a copy stamp depending on how you're working, but that's kind of out of the scope of this video, so we're going to stick with this. So in order to have this to work, we need to go into our transform node, and in the rotate, so in the rotate X, we're going to use the detail function this time. So we'll do detail, and then we're going to identify the node we're using, which is going to be the for each begin metadata. And then we're going to use the iteration number. So each value here is going to have each point is going to have a different iteration number. So whatever point number 1 is, that's iteration 1. Number 2 would be 2, 3 is 3, obviously, and so on and so forth. So it's just going to provide a little bit of rotation here, which is not exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and create a random number based off of this value. And if you want, you could create a seed here. So let's also just put in some random number. And then we're going to also fit this just like we did before. So we'll put 0 to 1 because, again, our random number is going to be from 0 to 1. And then we're going to do 0 to 360. And like I said before, if you want to use a null or something to control those, just do the same thing I did with the copy stamp. So there we go for our random rotation. And then you could just change the seed or whatever to get a different value. And then you do the same thing here. Whoops. And you get a bunch of random rotation, which is what you're looking for. So for scale, it's essentially the same thing, except for we would want to change it from, I don't know, 0.2 like we had before to 1.5 or 2.5, whatever I just typed. 1.5, yeah. So you can get the random scale just like that as well. And like I said, use the nulls if you want. Go ahead and show you if that still works for this. So just delete that last value and then paste relative references, and boom, it's working. So you can just change that and control our random scale as well. So super simple to set up. There are some benefits to using the for each over the copy stamp, like I said, but we'll use whatever one's going to work best for you. Whichever one makes the most sense for you is the one that I would use for your given situation. So as you play with it more and use Houdini more, you'll kind of understand which is going to work best for whatever situation you're in. If you wanted to do more things inside of your for each loop, then obviously that'd be a situation where you'd want to use the for each over the copy stamp. If you're already going to be using a for each loop, you might as well set up it as a for each loop rather than a copy stamp. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want. Essentially, you'll get the same results no matter what. So hopefully this helped you out and can help you create a little bit more variation inside of your procedural models. But thank you guys for watching and have a good day.